So we've got our very last recipe for you today. I'm going to start chopping because there's a lot of chopping to do, but it's ratatouille. Aubergine. You may never have cooked with an aubergine before, you may never have even eaten an aubergine before. It might not appeal very much to you, but give it a go. Everything in this recipe is going to be a similar size chop. So you're going to do a really nice cube basically for everything. So aubergine, courgette, pepper, onion and garlic. And it makes a lovely sort of vegetable stew type thing. And then we're going to make some garlic bread to go with it. And it's really nice for dipping. The thing about aubergine and courgette as well is that it doesn't have a huge amount of flavour unless you get some colour on the veg when you're cooking it. So what you really want is you want a pan with some nice hot oil in it, and then you're going to try and sort of brown the aubergine and the courgette off. So normally we'd start our recipe with the onion, like we have done on a lot of the previous recipes, but actually the aubergine and the courgette need a bit more colour to it, so we're going to start with them and then we'll add in the onion later. So you've got a bit of oil in your frying pan or a large pan, whatever you want to use, and then you heat that nicely and then pop the aubergine in. You don't want to, you need enough oil, but you don't want a crazy amount of oil because aubergine's like a sponge and it literally sucks up all the oil, and if you put too much oil in then you're going to have like a quite a greasy taste, which you definitely don't want. But you're looking to sort of brown it off. And in this recipe you kind of want equal quantities of all the different veg. So I haven't seen your aubergines yet, so if they're massive just use half an aubergine. But they do sweat down quite a lot, so they'll reduce quite a lot in size, and this is one of those meals that's very easy to keep in the fridge and eat another day, or you could freeze it if you've got a freezer and you've got space in your freezer. And it's really nice as a topping on pasta or a topping on a jacket potato or something like that. So I'm going to get my courgette now. I'm going to cut off the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to slice it down so that I've got the sections. So I'm going to try and do like a third along. And it doesn't have to be exact, but any sort of rough cube type shape. If you want it like a lot chunkier than this, you can do that, but just make sure that everything's a similar size so that when everything's cooking it cooks at a similar speed. Because if you've got like a massive piece of aubergine and then tiny cubes of courgette, it's going to be, one's going to be raw and the other's going to be mushy. So you can see that it's getting a nice bit of colour on it now, like that piece there. That's the type of thing you want, nice browning. If you're thinking, yuck, aubergine, then I'd definitely say just give it a go and see how you feel about it when you've cooked it and you've added the tomato and all of the other flavours, because it's one of those things that you might think you don't like, but then you might discover that you really like. And it's got loads of veg in, which is never a bad thing. When I was little, my dad used to sometimes make ratatouille, and it was my worst ever meal because I really, really hated aubergine and I hated courgette when I was little. And he would make garlic bread with it as well, and so I would just have the sauce with the pepper and the tomatoes and dip my garlic bread in it and not eat or pick around the courgette and the aubergine, which was probably quite annoying to my dad. I'm going to chop my onion now. I might just use half an onion because this one's fairly big, but it's up to you. Kind of see how much you'd like to add. I'm just going to keep stirring this. But I'm going to cook this a bit more before I add my onion, because I want this to be really nice and brown, but I don't want my onion to fry. So I'm going to wait for this to brown off, and then I'm going to reduce the heat and add my onion after that. So in the meantime, we're going to do our garlic bread. So I think, I haven't seen the baguettes that I've ordered for you yet, but I think they're going to be similar to this. So these ones are the baguettes that you just can bake at home for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. So what you want to do is cut down, but not all the way through. So to help you not cut all the way through, it's handy if you do it at a slight angle, and then you'll kind of remind yourself that you don't want to go all the way through to the bottom. So get your knife and cut at an angle. You want a nice sort of slice there. Like that. And you can make the butter for your garlic bread as garlicky or ungarlicky as you like. I love garlic, so I'm going to make mine quite garlicky. I'm going to get my pack of butter, and I'm going to probably use about a quarter of the pack, but it's definitely not an exact measurement, so see how you get on. You could always use a little bit, and then if you don't think you've got enough, just add some more in. So I'm going to pop that in the bowl. It's helpful if you do it when it's not come straight out of the fridge, because it will make it tricky to mush it up. Because what you want to do now is you want to soften the butter. So just get the back of a spoon or a fork or something like that and squish the butter down so it softens. I definitely needed to take mine out of the fridge before now because it's quite firm, but just keep going. I'm just going to give my veg a little stir. And it's getting a nice brown colour on it now, so I'm going to turn the heat down and then I'm going to add my onions. So it's now on about a medium heat, and I'm going to add a little bit more oil so that the onion's got something to cook in, and it's just the onion's then going to be able to just sweat down gently. So add my onion in, and like before when we cooked onion, you don't really want that onion to colour. You're not doing fried onion, you're just sweating it down. So put it on quite a low heat. Mine's frying pan sounds like it's sizzling away, but it's just because it got very hot, so it will take a second to cool down. And then that onion will just soften down really nicely. Then we're going to put garlic in this and garlic in that. So because we're now at the right stage for garlic in both of our recipes, it saves us a bit of a job because we can do it in one go. So again, the garlic is entirely up to you how garlicky you want it. If you're not a huge fan of garlic, just put 1 clove in, or you don't have to put any garlic in, but again, it's one of those flavours that when it's raw, it's a very strong flavour, but when it's cooked down, especially if you put it in a pan and cook it gently, it's quite a soft background flavour with all the other things involved in that. So it is worth including it because it enhances the flavour and you get something more than just a tomato sauce. It really adds a depth of flavour to it. I actually realised that I was going to pick some basil from a little pot I've got growing outside, and I forgot, but maybe one of my girls could go out and get some for me, and then I can add it in. So if any of you are growing some basil or anything like that at home, then this is the recipe to pop it in. It's quite easy to grow basil. You can grow it from seed, so it's cheap to get a basil seed, and it's quite fun to have a little go at. It does like sun, so it needs to be on a sunny window ledge, or we've got ours outside. So it's been slightly eaten by slugs, but hopefully we could put a bit in this meal. If you don't have any fresh basil, then you could use a different seasoning that you might have had at some point in your box. I've put some in this week, some extra seasoning this week, so I know some of you will have, we had a bit of a mix, but I know some of you will have had like a basil paste, like a pesto type thing, and you could put a spoonful of that in. We'll add that sort of similar flavour, and it would just thicken your sauce slightly as well, which would be quite nice. Or some of the Mediterranean seasoning that some of you might have had in your box, something like that would be nice. Or if you've got some dried herbs, then you want those sort of Mediterranean flavours in this, because this is a French dish. as you might know if you've watched the film Ratatouille. I would look for an ingredient like oregano or thyme, something like that works nicely as a dried herb. So I'm going to get my garlic crusher. If you don't have a garlic crusher, then you can grate it very finely, or you could chop it finely if you can. So I'm going to add some of my garlic to this. I'm going to turn it up a little bit now. So I want it to be sizzling, I don't want it to be completely stopped. Let's go crazy with the garlic. Take that off into there. And then I'm going to add some of my garlic to my butter. And you can make garlic bread with anything, it doesn't have to be with a baguette. So you could do it on a bit of toast, you could do it with a pita bread, whatever you've got. And if your bread's going a little bit stale and needs using, it's quite a nice way to use it. So I'm going to stir that garlic into there. You can see that's all really nicely mushing down. I'm going to leave that to soften a bit more out in the open, and I'm going to chop my pepper now. So I know you've seen me do this before, but once again, chop in half. You can gently pull that inside out like that. You can probably get most of it out in one go. Woo! Bit of drama. And then you'd like to get that the white pitty bit out here. So just cut along with your knife and try and remove as much of the white pitty bit. And if you've got some seeds that are still in there, you can just give it a gentle tap and they should come out. And again, we want this pepper to be a similar size, so just cut it down and then cut it along, and then you've got some nice sort of squares of pepper that are a similar size to the aubergine and the courgette that's already in the pan. So add them in. I need my whole pepper just to balance out those flavours, because you do want sort of a similar quantity of each. And you can use any red, yellow, orange pepper. I wouldn't recommend using the green pepper just because it's a little bit more bitter flavour. And the role of the pepper and the tomato in this recipe is just to make it a little bit sweeter, because the aubergine has a fairly bitter flavour to it anyway. So now cut all that pepper up, watch your fingers, add it all in and let that sweat down. The other nice thing about this dish is that it's just a one pot dish, so you can cook it all in the pan. You don't need to do anything else to it, and it will be ready. So I'm going to let that pepper cook down a bit, and in the meantime I'm going to carry on doing my garlic bread. So hopefully my butter will have softened a little bit more here. And now what I want to do is I want to really, in fact I'm going to use a fork, it might make my life a little bit easier. So I want to get all of that garlic as mixed in as possible. So you want it evenly distributed. You don't want like a massive clump of garlic in one bit of butter and none in the rest. So keep going. If you leave your butter out of the fridge for, I don't know, a good half an hour or more, then it will be a lot easier to do this. But we're getting there. And then you just need a knife, and you're going to get a little bit of your butter. You're going to open up your bread, so where you've sliced it already, get a bit of butter, just like you're buttering a sandwich, and just spread it inside. Be generous with the butter, because you want it all to melt through it and go really nice and crispy. Ideally, you'd like some kitchen foil to wrap this in. So if you've got some kitchen foil, get a sheet ready and you can wrap it up. And if it does like what mine's just done, so this bit I had obviously cut too far down, but it doesn't really matter, you can just kind of squish it back together. And you want to just go all the way to the end, making sure that every slice has got some butter between it. And you might be thinking, well, what's the point in making your own garlic bread when you can just buy it? But it's nice to make something from start to finish and know that you did it all. And be like, well, I made that and I made this that went with it, and not have to rely on bought stuff. But like I was saying earlier, it's also a really nice way of using up some bread that needs eating and things like that. So if you've got it, you might think in the future, oh, I could do that with it. It's just another thing that you can do. So we've gone all the way along, and then I'm going to get some foil and I'm going to put my garlic bread into the foil like that, stick it back together, and I'm going to do it up like that, kind of roll the top over, and then you can just twist the end. If you make sure that there's no way that the butter, when it melts, can spill out, that's perfect. If you don't have any foil, just make sure it's on a baking tray or something like that, because otherwise the butter will go out all over your oven. So that can go in the oven for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. Over here, our pepper's nice and softened, and we're ready to add the tomatoes, which is the final bit. Now you can make ratatouille with any tomato really. You're going to have passata in your box, but if you've still got some chopped tomatoes from a previous week, I'd recommend you use the chopped tomatoes instead of the passata. But I couldn't get you any chopped tomatoes this week that weren't like catering size tins, and I thought that was a bit excessive. So if you've got a tin of chopped tomatoes, I'd definitely use that instead of the passata, and save your passata for a pasta sauce or something like that. If you've only got the passata, then use it, it'll be fine, but you definitely don't need a whole carton of it. So maybe about half of it or less, maybe about a third of it. You can make this recipe with fresh tomatoes as well. So if you've got any fresh tomatoes that need eating up, then it's a really good recipe to put them in. Some recipes will tell you to skin the tomatoes, so you put them in boiling water, and then you put a little cross in the top of the tomato, put it in boiling water, and then you can peel the skin away, which is like what you get in a tin of chopped tomatoes. And you can do that if you can be bothered, or you can just include the skin. You could make this really nice with some cherry tomatoes. So if you've got some cherry tomatoes hanging about that need eating up. And I'd also say, like, even if you don't have all the ingredients for this, you could still make it, and it would make a really nice sort of veg sauce. And if you're trying to encourage your kids to eat veg, it's a really nice way of doing it, because the veg is still like quite identifiable, so you can see that you're eating a bit of pepper or a bit of courgette, but you've got all the flavours of the tomato and things like that, which are a bit more of a familiar flavour. And I've turned the heat up quite high now, and I'm just going to really bring those tomatoes up to temperature, and like magic, some basil from our garden has appeared, so I'm going to include that, and just take off the stalks or take off any bits that have been slightly nibbled, and then you can chop it, or you can just rip it in. It's such a lovely fresh flavour. You don't need loads either to make a nice flavour in that. And I'm going to add some pepper as well. If your tomato tastes really acidic, like if this sauce is really acidic now, you could add a tiny little bit of sugar, just to take the edge off slightly, which is is quite a nice little thing to remember for any sort of tomato sauce you're making. If your tomatoes are really sort of sharp in flavour, if you put a tiny little bit of sugar in, it can just really sort of balance that sauce out. But that is your dish. So ratatouille ready to go. If you're waiting for your garlic bread to cook still, you could just turn this down and let it bubble gently away, and then when your bread's done, get it out, break a few slices off and dip your bread in, and enjoy your ratatouille with your garlic bread. I will just grab my garlic bread out and see if you can see what it's beginning to look like. It won't be completely cooked now, but we'll have a look and see. So you get a little bit of an idea. Be really careful when you touch your foil when it's been in the oven, because it will be very hot. So you can see here the butter's beginning to melt and go all melty and delicious between the bread. But you want it to have a nice sort of crust on it. So I'm going to pop that back in, leave it to cook a little bit longer, and then I'll turn this down slightly and I'll enjoy it all together when it's finished. But enjoy your cooking and keep on cooking if you've been cooking along. I know that there are some plans in place to have a few more shared cooking events or a nice shared picnic or something like that. So hopefully I can meet you in the future. Take care.